Welcome again to the Fiercely Sassy Show, where female entrepreneurs and influencers become tech savvy together. Today, I wanted to introduce my good friend Sarah. And Sarah, I would love for you to take a moment and just introduce yourself and share why you're here today.
I am Sarah, and thank you so much for having me. I am a newsletter specialist. I have been working in the digital marketing space for about 10 years now. I was a homeschooling mom for my two neurospicy kids, and when they were getting ready to graduate, I had the opportunity to go out on my own and open my own business and niche right down to newsletters because newsletters excite me. They light me up. They are the best way to build relationships with your audience and really connect with your audience. And so that's what I do, and I just love them.
One thing you talked about with me prior to this interview is that what you hear a lot, I don't like getting emails. Can you talk to this? Because I have said that many times myself.
Yes, and you know what? In all honesty, I don't like getting emails either, but I love getting newsletters. And, we get emails all day long. You go to the store and you buy that new t-shirt and they ask you, oh, what's your email address? And you give it to them. And then your inbox just fills up with, buy this here, we're having this sale, buy that, 10% off, free. And ain't nobody got time to open all those emails. However, a newsletter is very, very different. A newsletter is exciting to read. It's full of value. It's where you go for education. And a newsletter is like writing to a friend. It's much more casual. It's entertaining. Like I said, it's educational, and people love to read newsletters. So just a basic email and a newsletter are two very, very different things.
What I presume you mean by newsletters in my inbox, which is just sell. And I'm assuming that's not what we're talking about here.
No. Your newsletter are the ones where you open it and they're telling a story, or they're talking about what they did that day, and they're incorporating some sort of education or value around it. My personal newsletter, there are so many nerdy references and pop culture and movies and that kind of thing. Sometimes I talk about my cats or my kids, but there's always value and education, right? I obviously talk a lot about emails and newsletters and email marketing, lead magnets and all that kind of thing, but it's always fun. It's a fun read. It's an entertaining read. I read newsletters. I read a lot of newsletters simply because I'm a newsletter nerd. And they're fun, and I look forward to getting them. I don't look forward to getting buy my stuff.
What do you think people are making a mistake with when they are trying to write their newsletters? Because obviously some women in our community have already written their own newsletters, but maybe aren't seeing the success from it.
Being too conservative. Now, I recently heard someone make a distinction, and this just was so fabulous. The distinction between conservative and professional. So often we say, oh, I need to be professional. Well, when we think of professional, we think using conservative language. We need to be proper, sort of rein ourselves in and be a certain way. But that's not professional, right? That's conservative. What professional is who you are, your personality, your brand personality. If your brand personality is fun and goofy and quirky, well, then your newsletter needs to be fun and quirky and all those things, right? And that's what your professional newsletter is going to look like. It should be fun. It should be building that relationship. The point of your newsletter is so that your people can get to know you and get to like you, get to love you, and then they trust you. So that when it does come time for a launch, or you're having a particular sale on your products and that kind of thing, they already love you and they're already primed and ready to buy. There's absolutely time for you to send out those buy now emails, but you need to be strategic in when you send them. You don't want to send them all the time. You want to send them just during a launch period. So, a couple weeks during a a quarter, a couple weeks, twice a quarter, but not every single week, not, twice a week, not, every single day. Because that just exhausts people and people don't have time for that. But your newsletter is fun. It's like writing to a friend. It's full of your personality. People really want to get to know you, and you want to give them that peek behind the curtain so that they do get, and you build that relationship with them.
And speaking of getting to know you behind the curtain, can you tell us a little bit about your own experience, how you got into newsletters? I know you mentioned when your kids, I believe, left home. How did you find all of this? I know more about you than our viewers do, and I would love for them to hear a bit of your story.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I was a homeschooling mom. I have 2 neurospicy kids. And when my youngest got into high school, she needed me less and less and less, as they do when they're teenagers. And so I started working in the digital marketing space doing freelancing. And I was writing blogs and social media posts. I was doing newsletters and email marketing. And I was also helping university students with their essays. I love to write. I've been writing as long as I can hold a crayon. And then as my daughter got closer to graduation, it became quite apparent that there would be an end date to parenting, which had never occurred to me. All I ever wanted to do with my life was to be a parent. And so it had never even crossed my mind that full-time parenting, there's an end date. I suddenly was left going, okay, now what? And at the same time, the people that ran the digital marketing company that I was doing most of my freelancing for, they sort of niched down to the point where they were only doing websites. And so they didn't need my services either. So at the same time, I was left with, now I don't have my writing. I don't have parenting anymore. Like, what's left for me? Like, there's no place for me in the world. But I was really lucky that the people that own the digital marketing company, as well as my best friend, who is also an entrepreneur, both said to me, you're really good at this. You should go and do this on your own. You should open your own business. And so that's what I did. My daughter is a daily inspiration because she's autistic and she was never supposed to graduate. And so I sort of had this moment of, well, if she can do it, if she can get to the point where she can graduate and she can go to university, then I can certainly start over and start my own business. And so that's what I did. And when I started my own business, I realized that because it's my own business, I don't have to do what everybody else wants. I can decide to do what I want and what lights me up. And that's newsletters. So I didn't have to do social media anymore. Social media drains my soul. I applaud anybody who loves social media and can spend time on social media. That's not me. And so I decided that I'm going to just do the one thing that makes me the happiest, which is newsletters. And I got really, really good at newsletters. And so I am now a newsletter specialist.
There's so much packed in there. I mean, that's just an amazing story. I mean, I know more of it, but I think the thing that will help our viewers the most out of that whole saga is that you chose to do what you like. You don't have to do what everybody else does. I think there's such a push. You have to do social media. You have to do, email marketing. You have to make the cold calls. And I think as women, we are more inclined to do what we're told, even if it's not good for us. And I think your story speaks to just making your own path.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first started my business, I was absolutely convinced that if I wasn't on social media, that my business would fail, even though I know better. But I was convinced that if I wasn't on social media, if I wasn't battling the algorithms, if I didn't do everything exactly the way, I needed to, and producing all the different types of content that social media algorithms want from you in order to stay relevant and for people to see your posts, that my own business would fail. In trying to keep up with all of that, I lost all the joy in doing my business because I was so busy trying to keep up with algorithms. I then give myself permission to stop doing that and just lean in hard into my newsletter because that's what I love. I love sending out newsletters. That's why I do what I do. And so once I gave myself permission to not do what I didn't like to do, all that joy came back, and my business hasn't failed. My business has grown and grown and grown, and I'm able to build deeper, stronger relationships with my audience, because it's much easier to do that through my newsletter than it is on social media. For me, anyway. Yeah.
So what is one tidbit you would give to someone if they were just starting their business, or maybe they're making a commitment this year to become more tech savvy, as we do in this community, that you think you learned from your experience of switching from doing what everyone wanted to honing in on your specific skill set?
I tell everybody that the best time to start your newsletter is last week. You should always start your newsletter right away, because you never know who's listening, who's watching, and it's always best to start building those relationships right away. And then the other tidbit I have for anyone who is getting started is, don't be afraid of tech. There is always someone out there who can support you. And if learning the tech is daunting and you just don't have time for it, like I didn't with social media, it's okay for you to not stress out about it. And it is the zone of genius of someone out there. And even if you can outsource just that tiny piece, that can get you over the hump, right? Or get somebody to teach it to you. Does that make sense? Right?
Totally makes sense. That's exactly why we're here.
Yeah. Tech can seem scary. Give yourself permission to either find someone to teach it to you, or just don't do it. But stay doing what you love. Find what you love and give yourself permission to do that.
So well said. The next question that's coming up for me is the practical side of it, because obviously we've talked about the emotional, kind of the how you got here, but what do you think someone could do if they don't necessarily have an email list to go to, or don't have like that big client database that they could just send a sale out or a newsletter out? How would someone get started?
Get started building their newsletter, you mean?
Yeah.
The best way to get started with building your newsletter is to come up with a freebie, a lead magnet. And the best ones, the best performing ones, and this is the greatest news, is a simple PDF. Think of something you can give your audience a quick win, put it down onto like a simple Google Doc and upload it as a PDF. And then you can post it on your social media. When you're having calls with people, you can offer it to them so they can go and sign up. Just, put it out everywhere. If you're guesting on a podcast, whatever you're doing, offer it to them. And then that's how you can start building your newsletter list. And if you start doing it right away, then you have that opportunity to start building those relationships right away. And then when you're ready to do that launch, when you're ready to start selling to people, you already have an audience to do it with. But yeah, you don't have to go fancy. You don't have to build quizzes. You don't have to have free webinars. You don't have to put a lot of work into it. You can sit down and put together a PDF in, an hour, right? And upload it. It doesn't have to look really pretty if you want to. You can use a program like Canva to make it a little bit prettier. But yeah, the top 2 performing lead magnets are PDFs and quizzes, because everybody loves a quiz, but it doesn't have to be fancy to get started.
Now that we know that we should start with a PDF, or maybe if we're bold enough, a quiz, what would you do if you had a client come and start with you today? What is the process for working with you?
Well, there's 2 ways that people can work with me. One way is if you're someone that likes to do it yourself, and this is where I was sort of talking about, like, if you want to learn how to do it, there's someone to teach you. I have a half-day coaching program where I literally teach you everything there is to know about newsletters, from choosing your platform, brainstorming lead magnets. You'll walk away with 12 weeks of content ideas. We do a full content dump, so I will teach you everything you need to know for newsletter success. And the other way you can work with me is I just take it all off your plate. If doing newsletters is just not something you're interested in, I can set it up all for you, set up your lead magnet, your welcome sequence, or I can just completely create all the content for you, and you'll never have to think about it again.
That Sounds amazing. Obviously, our agency has a similar model, the teach you how to do it yourself or we'll do it for you. I just think it's something that people aren't tapping into. I would love if our community took you up on some of your offers. Obviously, we will be sending out some freebie if you want to tell us about it for a moment.
The freebie that I have right now is my system for batching, and I love batching. Obviously, being a newsletter specialist, I am all about content creation and making it easier. I create a lot of content, and so making it easier is always a bonus. The best way that I have found for making content creation easier is by batching. And so I have laid out a lead magnet all about my batching process. I literally book a weekend every quarter with my business bestie, and we literally go away for a weekend to batch all of our content for a quarter. This is not quite that intense. We sort of taken it up a notch just because I'm so enthusiastic about batching. But yeah, the lead magnet is about sort of my batching process and how much easier it can make content creation.
What is one thing you think people could do today to get started, whether it's working with you or something on their own? Like, what is like the one actionable step people can walk away from this conversation with?
They can book a call with me and we can have a chat about how I can help support them and we can get them on their way. Or they can figure out what they would like to do for their lead magnet. That's kind of the first step, is to figure out what you want for a freebie. And the best way to do that is to ask yourself 2 questions. What are my people always asking me? And what comes up in conversation when I'm talking to them all the time? I often hear content creation just takes so long. I don't have time to create more content. So I heard that over and over and over when I was talking to people. So if you can ask yourself those 2 questions, right? And then try and come up with like 2 to 4 ways to answer that, to address that. And then pick one of those and create your lead magnet. So that's kind of where it starts, because you need something to sort of draw them in. In this age of information privacy, and everyone's like, being really careful about giving out their information, as we all should be, you really want something enticing for people to exchange their email address for, to give you their information for that. So that's kind of where it starts.
In closing, what is one message you would like our audience to know if they are going to go down the road of building their own newsletter and starting this process?
Just do it. If you don't get your lead magnet out there, no one's going to be able to sign up. So don't worry about it being pretty. Just launch it. Just do it. If you need additional support, if you're getting overwhelmed, book a call with me. We can figure out how I can support you. I think having a newsletter is a non-negotiable because you own it. Somebody else owns social media. Facebook and Instagram a few years ago went down and everybody was panicking because how are they going to contact their audience? How are they going to connect with them? How are they going to make sales if nobody knows, they can't get a hold of them? And who wasn't panicking? The people who had a newsletter list, right? Because they own that. Right? They're not battling algorithms. So, just do it. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just, there's a term, launch ugly. You can make it pretty later. Just get it started. If it's not out there, no one can sign up.
And last, most important question of the interview. So are you ready?
Yep.
What is your favorite tea?
My favorite tea. Oh, this is so good. So I'm a huge tea drinker. I'm a tea aficionado. So my favorite tea right now, because I have recently stopped drinking milk in my tea, which is like bonkers for me. But my favorite tea right now is I take 1 decaf, like orange pekoe, like basic bee tea. And I put that in my teapot. And then there is this ginger peach herbal tea that I put in with it. And it's so good. So that's my favorite tea right now, is like a mix of those 2. So it still has like the bite of a black tea, Like, and I only drink decaf, but it's a ginger peach flavor. It's so good. And it's really good iced and hot.
I will have to ask you more about where you get this peach tea because it
just-
sounds phenomenal.
I just get it at the grocery store.
Well, that is an amazing way to wrap this up. That is like a whole recipe for a perfect tea for an afternoon. So this was a perfect afternoon, and I appreciate you again coming and sharing your expertise with our community. So, my friends, we are wrapping up another episode of the Fiercely Sassy Show. We will have all of the links and information to reach out to Sarah in the description for the YouTube video and then within our community on Facebook. Links below in the description. But thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.